Hi, I'm Matt Schron. I lead product management here at Livefront, and I'm here today to deliver the third of our 7 lessons for bringing a new mobile app into the world. We're calling this series 0 to 1 with Mobile, Lessons for Bringing Your First Mobile Product to Market. Today's lesson is emphasize themes over features. When launching a new product, inevitably, you're going to be faced with the question of what feature set should it have? And I'm sure many of you listening to this are familiar with the conversation of, is this an MVP feature or not? So in today's lesson, we're going to dig into that a little bit more. Okay, what does it really mean to emphasize themes over features? So, as we all know, whenever you're bringing a new product into the world or a new mobile app to market, you're gonna have to decide what are the features that are gonna have to go in that first version of the product. Or in other words, what is that MVP feature set? And there's a lot of considerations that you might take in determining what your MVP product needs to do. And there's a lot of great methods and tactics that you can use for finding those answers. Some examples include, we did a bunch of user research and interviews, and a recurring theme was that users really needed X or cited X as an unmet need. Or maybe you took a more quantitative approach and ran a Kano survey, which showed that there was a lot of intensity around another certain feature. Maybe you did some retroactive analysis of the analytics data that you already have and found that your existing users on your web app were disproportionately using a certain feature on the mobile version of your site. Maybe you've already done some prototyping, and in the user testing that you did, you found that participants had a lot of success with a certain feature that you had prototyped. All of these are great reasons and great bits of evidence that might help you form a really strong hypothesis around what does our MVP product need to do? What features does it need to have? So now let's look at some bad examples. The first one is, our website has X, so our mobile app should too. A common misconception when organizations are building a new mobile app is that by default, it should have perfect feature parity with their website. You should instead really focus on the context with which users use your product, and their needs on the mobile form factor very often might be different than your website, and therefore you should think of your mobile app as a blank slate. Yes, there probably are certain minimum features that users just expect to be supported in your mobile app if they've already become accustomed to those on your website, but that rule doesn't apply for every last feature. So really take this as an opportunity to reassess your mobile feature strategy. Going back to the earlier point made about an internal versus an external focus, oftentimes we see teams prioritize features just because we had a 3-hour internal meeting where we stack ranked every feature on the board, and the feature Y got the most votes. And while it certainly is important to build internal consensus, but just because you met for 3 hours doesn't mean that that feature you decided is the most important actually resonates with your customers and users who are outside the building. And the last example is, our marketing team wants to launch a campaign next month, so we'll need Z. And again, this is another form of having that internal focus. But instead of letting what your marketing roadmap is drive what your feature roadmap is, it really ought to be the other way in reverse. Find what really matters and where your product can provide value to users, and then build a promotional strategy based on that versus the other way around. And so really what we're talking about here is an opportunity to evolve past the traditional definition of a feature roadmap. There's a lot of thought and conjecture about what the optimal role of product roadmaps are. And we certainly don't take the position that product roadmaps are obsolete, but we do contend that product roadmaps, as they're often executed today, place an overemphasis on individual features and underemphasize the underlying themes or motives or strategic goals for why these features really matter. What we've seen a lot of success with is evolving past a feature roadmap and moving towards a theme-based roadmap. So what is a theme-based roadmap? If we look at a simple taxonomy, a theme is a strategic direction or imperative for your product. It often encompasses a set of features, but it's one level above that. Oftentimes, the best themes are oriented to a problem or opportunity that represents a way that your product can really bring value. As an example, going back to Spotify, a theme might be, we want to minimize the amount of time our users are spending in our app not listening to music. And so underneath that theme, there's a lot of possible different feature directions that it can go. But by starting with the theme, you're really first naming what is ultimately important. And then underneath that, you're allowing room for lots of different ways in which you can get there. And so if we define feature, this probably doesn't need much of a definition, but if it's an aspect of your product that yields some functional benefit. We believe that the best way to think about features is under the realm of themes. And then finally, one layer below features are dev stories. And these are essentially a unit of work, a set of tasks that's needed to achieve a given feature that hopefully contributes to a larger goal or theme. So what then are the advantages of a theme-based roadmap over a more traditional feature-based roadmap? Well, unsurprisingly, a lot of the rationale for why we advocate for taking a theme-based approach parallels with many of the aspects that we've been talking about throughout this series of 7 lessons for launching a new product. The first one is that themes are oriented to outcomes. So what does that really mean? Well, where a good, well-formed theme is very opinionated on what is important, and more importantly, why, it's very flexible on how that might be achieved. So going back to the Spotify example, if we've determined that a strategic theme for our product is to minimize the amount of time people spend in the Spotify app not listening to music, there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. We can really lean in to optimize our music search experience. We can curate playlists for users where they can be listening to music that they love with one simple tap. We can really work to streamline and make more efficient all the administrative functions in the app, such as registration and account management. And this very flexible nature on how we're achieving certain goals lends itself well to experimentation. And oftentimes, the products you love became lovable through the process of experimentation and A/B testing, and a skilled product team tinkering around with what really moves the needle for creating value based on the North Star and the strategic themes that we've set forward. And so if your ultimate goal is to minimize the amount of time users are in your app not listening to music, there's lots of different experiments that you can run at scale and get concrete answers to those questions and ultimately move the needle forward. And the second advantage of a theme-based roadmap is that it's a really effective way to build alignment. By expressing your product motive in terms of themes, you're leading with a statement about why something is important. So let's take this for example. Let's say on the Spotify team, this month we're implementing Sign In with Apple. You tell your CEO, hey, this month we're gonna release Sign In with Apple. She might say, cool, why are you doing that? Now you are in a position where you have to defend the rationale for why you're building that particular feature. You might have a really great case for building with Sign In with Apple. In our case of Spotify, we're trying to minimize the amount of time people spend in the registration flow so they can listen to music as quickly as possible. And Sign In with Apple gives us the opportunity to allow users to register in 2 taps. It makes all the strategic sense in the world, but by leading with, we're implementing Sign In with Apple, what you're not revealing is why you're doing that. Whereas, if you were expressing your team's progress and plans in the form of a theme-based roadmap, you could tell your CEO, this month, we are working on ways to minimize the amount of time people are spending in the Spotify app not listening to music. You're leading with a statement about why you're doing the thing you're doing. And what we've found is oftentimes that's a much more effective way of communicating with stakeholders who are outside the immediate product working team. The third reason or advantage of a theme-based roadmap is that it forces you to define what really matters. Again, by naming that theme, you are forcing a conversation about what you're ultimately trying to do, and then naturally, it forces a conversation about whether or not individual features advance that particular goal. Built into this is prioritization. You're being really opinionated about what matters. And then when inevitably members of the team bring their favorite pet feature examples up for consideration, you're then forced to evaluate, okay, do push notifications help minimize the amount of time people are spending in our app not listening to music? We might need to think about that one a little bit more. And so we found a real strength of a theme-based roadmap is that it illuminates what's important, and where most people can align and agree on what those goals, people might have differing opinions on how to get there, but by starting the conversation in a place where people agree on what the goal is, we found it leads to much better collaboration and outcomes for product teams. And there you have it. By emphasizing themes over features, you force your team to have a conversation and form a point of view about what really matters, and then think critically about the features that may contribute to those strategic goals and imperatives. By taking this approach, teams can avoid feature bloat and maximize their time spent on things that really matter in the end for users and our business alike. And that concludes our third lesson, emphasize themes over features. We hope you'll join us for the fourth installment of our 7-part series, which my colleague Jack will talk to you about a healthy way to look at technical debt as you're building your first mobile app. Thanks, everyone.